Authentic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
And I, wandered around the building. There was nobody there. And I opened up this one door, and there was like hundreds of people partying with party hats on. I called the guy in New York. I said, "Doesn't look good."
I'm Kevin Savitz, and this is an interview episode of Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. Steve Davis worked in Atari's Advanced Research Lab under Alan Kay for 5 or 6 years, where he worked on several skunkworks projects, including a Laserdisc player controlled by an Atari 800, an Atari 800-based local area network, and artificial intelligence projects. This interview occurred May 11, 2015.
I'll give you a background, and you can, if I drag on too long, you can just hang up, I guess. I started out, I worked at Warner Communication in New York, and worked my way west, went to the cable company in Columbus, where they were doing a two-way cable interactive system called Cube. That was in 1977. Mm-hmm. And then there was some software problems, so I got transferred myself out to the West Coast to work with the group that was doing the software on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. That was my intent, to try to get out to the West Coast. So we had an office in Burbank at the back studio lot. And at that point, Warner had purchased Atari, I believe. Mm-hmm. And that was around 1978-ish, that area. So I then worked for a guy named Alan Kay who ran the advanced research for Atari. Mm-hmm. But he was in charge of advanced research, and I had this secret little lab in Burbank back lot in a trailer. There was a building, there was a trailer made of trailers next to the, right in the middle of a movie lot. Uh-huh. And we had, software development and hardware development in that little facility. And we used Atari, so we had to use Atari stuff since we were owned by Atari. And we developed, I think it was the first video disc controlling system using an Atari 800. Wow. And where you could, there was a video disc of space travel, and you could visit the planets, and you would pilot yourself using the Atari 800. It would take you to a Pioneer video disc system.
Now, was this meant to be like an educational sort of title, or
it was supposed to be arty? You could zoom into planets, and so the computer knew what was on the disc, and it would direct the video disc to play it. Huh. And that was a large 12-inch video disc.
Right.
And that was demonstrated actually in Paris. Right. It was great working for them. It was demonstrated at the Pompidou Museum in Paris.
Wow.
And that was, I guess, it was the first computer-controlled video system in commercial. Then we had an office network, LAN, tying all the Atari 800s together. Mm-hmm. This is around same period, 1980-ish. And it may have been the first LAN. I don't know.
And this was a LAN of Atari 800?
800, so, all talking to each other.
Wow. And so you could share files, or what was...
Yeah, we could share files and communicate back and forth, send messages. Then the other thing we used during that time, I got involved with wireless games, and we actually used the Atari 2600. Mm-hmm. All the stuff about the cartridges being dug up and all that.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, the idea there was, and I made a proposal, and then my partner that ran the lab, a guy named Jerry McLaughlin, to replace those cartridges with a wireless cartridge.
Okay.
So that
you
didn't have to. Yeah, and the wireless cartridge concept was, instead of having to hope to sell 10 million games and manufacture millions of cartridges, which may or may not sell, they had the idea, gee, let's make it wireless and we'll just be able to download games and you'd pay for it that way.
So was this the kind of thing where it was delivered over television cable or?
No, it was over FM subcarrier. There was no other way to get information to the home. So we built a few of those cartridges and developed some high-speed subcarrier stuff, and we loaded, put it on local radio stations and sent demos, to games over the air. And it sort of worked. It worked okay. The reception was always an issue, but you would get a menu of, we'd play the top 20 games, let's say. So you get a rotating menu of 20 games, and you would select one. Then when it would get downloaded to your cartridge.
Wow.
And it would be stored in your cartridge.
And could the cartridge store multiple games, or if you wanted to change games, did you have to go back to the receiving mode? Yeah, you go back to the main menu and download another game. Because it didn't have much storage. It just had RAM, I think. It just would save it, put it on. It was like it would emulate a cartridge. I don't think we had flash then. So it just would, it would load it onto the Atari game, basically. And was there provision built in for actually buying or purchasing a game? Or did you just purchase access? No, you'd buy it. I think the concept was you had a code. It was scrambled, so you had a code, and they would give you access to these games. So you pay for a monthly fee. And I don't know, that's what I remember. And that was neat. And at that point, Atari was falling apart. Yeah. And I was spun off from Atari. Warner gave us some money to start our own little lab. I think it was Manny Gerard gave us some funding to salvage some of this technology. And we had a little lab in Santa Monica for a while. And it did some more wireless stuff, and that lasted about 5 years. And was that a separate company from Atari, or part of? Yeah. It was a separate company, but if we ever were successful, we would share it with Warner. Right. It was called Golem Labs, GOLEM. The logo was a one-eyed happy face. I want to go back to the first thing you mentioned, the Laserdisc thing. So I've seen a couple of pictures of like a kiosk. It was like a kiosk like for a store where you could that would show off the features of the Atari that was used a Laserdisc thing, and I believe the Laserdisc might have been shown at Consumer Electronics Show or something like that. Can you? Yeah, well, because again, it was piloted by a Atari 800, and there was Pioneer Electronics was the inventor of the Laserdisc. Right. And so I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the particulars. I know they had a kiosk made up with it inside, and that kiosk was what was dragged over to Paris. And so the guy who ran that, who was in charge of that whole program, was Alan Kay. Right. something to talk to him. So I heard a story in an interview I did. I'd like verification on this, and I'm trying. But it was someone who said that there was the Laserdisc player needed to be ready for some show. Maybe it was CES, and it was almost ready, but it wasn't quite working. And so for the show, they hid a guy under the table or something to manually control the Laserdisc.
I wouldn't doubt it, but I've never heard the story. I wouldn't doubt it. No, I never heard that, so I can't verify it.
Okay,
but I wouldn't doubt it. I'll tell you, just visually, things that stick in my mind. My office was sort of. I don't know if there was an old TV show called Fantasy Island.
Sure. And
I was on that set, right? So I met Ricardo Montalban all the time, was always in our office. But things I remember, I'd fly up to Atari, to their main office to see my boss, once a month or once every couple of weeks, whatever it was. And I remember people wearing snakes around their necks, like pythons. Which I thought was strange, but I was East Coast, so I guess it wasn't really.
Why were you involved with the Fantasy Island people?
That's where the set was. That's where our office was.
Oh.
Right next to the plane.
The plane. Nice. Well, that's wild.
And the plane was about 6 feet long. And that's all it was. And the ocean was a little dish of water. So that's my involvement with that.
Cool.
And everybody sort of was very smart, except for myself, I guess. And they all sort of spun off and did their own thing afterwards.
How did you get hired originally?
Originally, I was in New York, and I went. I worked for a small company out in Connecticut, and that company was. I got involved with some very weird stuff, and companies sort of. I wanted to go off to my own thing, and I met somebody who introduced me to people at Warner Communications, and they were doing this two-way interactive cable system I mentioned.
Right.
And so I developed all the computer systems for that and the work of, again, Pioneer Electronics on their cable converter box. So that's how I got involved. And then I wanted to be on the West Coast, so I talked to everybody that sent me to the West Coast. And since I was there, they put me under Alan Kay.
Right.
And the only other strong memory I had was the guys in New York asking me to look at what was going on at Atari and what my thoughts were. That's when they were falling apart. I forget the guy's name who was the underwear salesman, stock salesman.
Right.
Yeah, Ray.
Ray Cassar.
First name was Ray.
Yeah.
And I went out there and I went to look at what was going on in the offices. And this is a true story. I opened the door. There was nobody there in this building that I could find. But the parking lot was full of Mercedes, 240Ds. And I winded around the building. There was nobody there. And I opened up this one door, and there was like hundreds of people partying with party hats on. No exaggerating. And I said, okay. And I closed the door, and I left the building, and I called the guy in New York. I said, he said, it doesn't look good. He said, what would you suggest? I said, how about getting the bulldozer out and burying the building with everybody in it? And he didn't take me seriously. That was Manny Gerard.
You're harsh, Steve. Bulldoze the whole place.
Well, I guess everybody was always partying, so there was.
Yeah.
I guess when you make a lot of, they make millions of dollars on the cartridges, and they would not want to work.
So did you have a sense of all the LAN product and the Laserdisc thing and the wireless thing? So you helped develop these amazing things. Why did they never come out as products? Do you have any sense of that?
It really would take take the wireless thing. You need a network. You need a serious investment in a wireless network. Similar to building cell phone towers, and there was nobody. And Warner Communications is an entertainment company, really. And they looked at things short term, where they say, we're going to make a movie, and they make $100 million in a movie, and you move on. And Atari was pretty successful. It was like making a big movie. They made $1 billion, and they moved on.
Right.
They were very smart. They wanted, they weren't a high tech company that way. They were a company that made entertainment and show business.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there wasn't that management or that focus on investing a lot of money into long range technical advances. People had hoped they would do that, but Alan Kay did it.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the persistence, or it wasn't their thing. They were very, very successful and made a lot of money, and they didn't really want to lose it all investing in something that was not a sure thing.
Right.
So, it was never pursued. I mean, Pioneer, developed this Laserdisc, but never pursued it. And then reduce it in size, make it a different size, and, go down a whole different.
Right.
But I guess there was enough spin-offs or ideas from that percolated throughout the industry.
Yeah. It's true. Can you think of other skunkworky type things that you guys worked on?
These are quirky things. Well, the one that took they were into artificial intelligence, and there was a battle about that,
mm-hmm.
whether that would really be real or not. Alan Kay was really looking at that, but again, there was no real long-range plan on that.
Mm-hmm.
There were lots of people writing software for artificial intelligence. Quirky things, most quirky thing was the wireless stuff, I think. The wireless games, that was the most interesting
mm-hmm.
and hardest to do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the quirky things were the artificial intelligence, so immense amount of money spent on that.
Okay. But you asked
you were aware of that.
You misheard me, but you asked almost a better question. I said skunkworky, not quirky. But quirky is good too.
No, I guess I was our little lab was skunkworks, and most people have never heard of it. They made in other little groups that were spun off. But I mean, their idea was, and Alan believed it, like HP used to spin off groups when they were successful.
Mm-hmm.
And,
right.
Xerox PARC, that's where a lot of these people came from.
Right.
So there was a philosophy to spin off small groups and just give them some seed money and see what happens.
Right.
And, not have any control, just let them go.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that was a philosophy for a while. When you're making billions of dollars, you can do that.
Sure. Yeah. So I have it here on the timeline. It said that, I just want to kind of verify, it said you were part of Atari's Cyan Engineering. Is that the department you were in, or is that accurate? Or?
It was, I don't know what department. It was Advanced Research and Development run by Alan Kay. That would be the formal.
Okay.
I don't know if there was a name for that.
Right.
Maybe it was Cyan. And he had a bunch of, I don't know, he had a lot of people.
And how long were you there at Atari?
I moved to California in 1978-ish, and I probably was there for 5 or 6 years until they sort of folded, which is in the early 80s.
Yeah.
So I was there during, I came in when things were had been flying high.
Yeah.
And there was another spin-off guy who I stayed in contact with, a guy that did Chuck E. Cheese. Are you familiar with that?
Sure. Yeah. That was Nolan's other big venture.
Yeah. There was another very smart people doing that. But a lot of those people that worked on that came from Atari.
Yeah. So after they shut down the advanced research department, what did you
I had my own.
do?
They gave me money, and I started my own little company.
Uh-huh.
I brought in some 2-3 guys, and we tried to perfect that wireless system.
And how did that go?
We actually sold a bunch of the stuff to the Association for the Blind in Spain. Okay. They call ONCE.
Okay.
They were going to distribute lottery information to kiosks with this technology. And we made I don't know, 10,000 of these things, and we shipped them to Spain, and they refused to pay us. That was one little thing. Then we sued them, and they paid us. But they did pay us, so it worked out. And then, from then the cell phone came out,
Right.
And you didn't need all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it still has a niche. Every time you get traffic information in your car, that's sent over a subcarrier.
Awesome.
It's built into your radio. So it's sort of a funny little spin-off.
Cool. What haven't I asked you about your Atari days that I should have?
Well, I think it was, I don't know, it was a neat time. It was, you dealt with, it just was very smart people. It was fun to talk to them and meet them. And they were quirky. They weren't and people had strange ideas, and most of them were, they're real creative people. They were really creative people. It just was fun being around them.
Yeah.
It was just a neat time, actually. I forgot about the business side, about people making money from it. Of course, never much into that. I was into the creativity part.
What was that?
It was most of the creative people really weren't into making money, into just being creative.
Right.
It was good.
It seems like you were on the fun side of business. You just got to spend money and try to invent things.
Right. It was nice. It was all the success and all the hard work of people making games paid for everything. There were a lot of people. So it was a good opportunity that a percentage budget to support strange ideas, basically.
Right.
I don't know very many companies now that do that.
Well, I don't think a LAN is a strange idea. That was a very forward-thinking concept. Right.
It was, because people didn't have home computers, networks in offices.
Right.
Oh yeah, we also sent the same little group. We put a system in Mexico. It was sort of.
Can you say that again?
We put one of these wireless systems in Mexico. That was sort of wild. Where they sent stock information to offices. So over the same wire, at the same kind of FM networks.
That was as part of your follow-up business?
Yeah, that was a part of this little company that I formed.
Atari users listen to this podcast, and if you were going to send them a message to the Atari community that still exists, what would you tell them?
Okay, if anybody remembers the Burbank Bank lot, give me a call. It's a very select few. Okay. And it just like every day they would burn the building down next to us and unburn it.
Every day they would what?
Was a building next door. They used to have fires. They'd simulate burning it down. So you'd be having a meeting and look out the window. This building's burning. For a movie or a set, it's something.
Oh, I see.
Then they would turn off the gas and it would stop.
Nice.
So it was being part of like a big movie. So that was my feeling.
Nice.
A lot of fun. And I tried to sell Apple something, and they actually tried it out.
Say that again? You tried to?
I tried to get them interested in some of this stuff, but they had, there are much better ways today of transferring information. The only thing neat about it, if you wanted to send something to 10 million people, 100 million people at once for no cost, this is the way of doing it.
It seems like if anyone had, I don't know, any sort of infrastructure to distribute something to a large number of people, it would be Warner.
Right, that was the concept. Right.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so thank you for giving me an opportunity to reminisce.
Thank you. I appreciate your time this morning.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.